right away because we've got a big show to do. And, why not just start a new week like professionals? Why not get right to... What?
How are we doing that exactly?
Well, rather than, fart around for 10 or 15 minutes before one of us remembers that we should actually officially start the show, why don't we get right to it, Dan?
This episode of Humble and Fred is being broadcast to the world from our state-of-the-art Humble and Fred studio in Toronto, from our Kawarthas Lakeside facility with a newly painted picnic table, and from the trailer next door with a Dennis Duranis bust. I'm Dan Duran, broadcasting live from the Jeff Lewis Zoom Theater, and brought to you by the Retirement Sherpa, the Chambers Plan, Boron One, Bodog, and Lender's Choice Mortgages. And now, here are two men who have been eagerly awaiting the arrival of the heat dome so they can move from complaining about how cold it is to how hot and muggy it is. It's the grass is hotter, always greener guys, Humble and Fred.
Thanks, Dan. I have to admit, until about 8 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, I hadn't heard the term heat dome. But is that what they're calling it on the Weather Network?
They've been referring to the heat dome for some time now because it was parked over the southwestern United States and has been tracking northeast. So, yeah.
Hey, Freddie, I don't know. What did you do to your level right there? Because it just dropped off.
It did?
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As soon as you started talking, it just dropped down.
Oh, I don't know. How is it now?
Lower than it was when we did the mic check 8 seconds ago.
Okay, how's that?
I don't know.
Low.
Yeah, what did you do?
Nothing.
Well, I find that hard to believe.
Let me see.
Oh, there you go. See, it's the cable.
How's that?
Yeah, it's about the same.
Let me switch out cables, you guys.
Yeah, all right. Dan, I'm going to... So I'm looking here. It just says heat warning. Just turn your thing down. You can't switch out the cables when he's... Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he could mute.
He could mute. It's too late for that now.
You could mute him. Aren't you running the meeting? You could do the muting.
I see what you're saying. I can mute him. Okay,
yeah,
good one.
Doing what he's doing.
Well, am I late to... I feel sheepish because am I late to the heat dome party?
Yeah, that's been around.
Has it?
It's not. Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Have people
not only just it's been around for describing stuff that it goes. It's mostly been in the States that we've had the heat domes, but the last week or so they've been talking about the heat dome, and there's been flooding in Florida, and then there's this big heat dome that's been making its way our way.
I got to tell you, the more we talk about it, the more embarrassed I am because me, I love a good weather story, and if there were a heat dome, I'd like to know about it. Let me see. Now I have to ask him to unmute. Okay, can you unmute yourself because I muted you? There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that was weird. Anyway, I was just saying to Dan, I feel late to the heat dome party. And you know what they say, Dan? Ain't no party like a heat dome party, because a heat dome party don't stop.
I've taken great delight in using the term over the past several days. Everyone I see, basically, and Dan can verify this.
Oh, yes, I can. Yeah.
Are you preparing for the heat dome, or the heat dome's coming? And everybody, it was quite chilly here yesterday, actually. If you weren't in the sun, and I kept telling people just wait for the heat dome, and things will change.
Yeah, turn your mic back up because the level you presented.
Hello, how's that?
Let me see.
Hello, testing.
Yeah, now it's back to kind of okay. Dan, let me hear you.
And I'm here.
Yeah, you're perfect.
Want me to turn me down?
No, you're just a tiny bit because I bumped him up. The health risks are greater for older adults, infants, young children, pregnant people, people with physical and or mental illnesses, and people with disabilities or mobility issues. Now, who else is there? Who's left? Who do we leave out? Because that pretty much covers everybody.
Yeah, and then, they worry about street people, homeless people. If you were a homeless person, would you rather be too hot or too cold? I often think about that. Like in the winter, there's cold warnings. If you're in that predicament, would you rather be too cold or in the summer too hot? If you had your choice.
Well, here's my answer. I'd rather not be homeless. Would be my answer.
That goes without saying.
Does it?
Howard. Yeah. Show some sensitivity.
Anytime somebody says that goes without saying, I'm like, really? Well, I just said it. So obviously it doesn't. So the heat dome is what they're calling it. Daytime highs through much of this week are expected to be 30 to 35 with the humidex values of 40 to 45. There will be little relief through the overnight as lows are expected to be only getting down to the early 20s.
Again, I'm still waiting for it to arrive here. I was just out on the deck, and it's still pretty cool here. What did it feel like when you took Stan out this morning? Could you feel it coming?
It was actually pretty pleasant.
Okay.
Would you like to hear a list of the effects of heat illness?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Are you ready?
Rash is on the list, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Survey says rash. The effects of heat illness, Dan, take this down.
Okay.
Swelling, rash, cramps, fainting, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and the worsening of some health conditions. So that means if you've already got some health conditions, I mean, if you're one of the people on the list for greater risk, and you've got worse, and you've got health conditions already, you should probably just stay inside for this entire week.
Well, let me ask you guys, what do you prefer? A heat wave? Like
heat.
A punishing heat
Yes.
wave or a cold snap?
Much more prefer the punishing heat.
Me.
You do?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
Yeah. What about you, Fred? What do you prefer?
Yeah, probably that, but I don't know. The cold snap, you seem to be able to escape it a little easier just by being in the house. But, when it gets to be 35, 40, even sometimes air conditioning struggles. You know what I'm saying?
How about this question? Of the following, swelling, rash, cramps, or fainting, what would you rather have?
Probably just cramps. Rash, you can see. I don't want to faint, bash my head. Cramps. I could live with cramps.
Dan, how about you? Swelling, rash?
Swelling, I go with swelling.
Dan would go with swell. Of course you would. Of course you
All
would.
those others sound too uncomfortable. Fainting, you don't want to be fainting. That seems worse than swelling.
I think fainting is worse than swelling.
Oh, yeah, because you could fall and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And at our age...
Speaking of our age, on the weekend I went for another bike ride, and I headed over to what I first thought was Mount Pleasant Cemetery. It's not. It's Park Lawn Cemetery. And I bike along Bloor Street over there to Prince Edward in the West End here, and then I go into the cemetery, and it was pretty interesting. It was Saturday morning. It was a beautiful day. It's actually pretty nicer on the weekend. And... this is my second trip around that cemetery, and it gives you an interesting perspective because you see people coming to drop off flowers for their loved ones, and you see people working in the cemetery that are preparing grave sites and all kinds of activity. But it takes me about, 8 minutes or so to do an entire loop around the cemetery. And I start, slowing down and reading the headstones. Some of those people have been dead in there a very long time. Like, people that died in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And, you see how long their lives were. Born in 1835, died in 1920, whatever it was. Here's my question. And one of the reasons I brought it up is, first of all, it does make you appreciate. It did make me appreciate, the fact that I still get to be alive and ride a bike around the cemetery. And how long you're dead for. You're dead for a very long time, Dan.
Dead's not a short.
Seriously, dead is not. If you're not That's it. Death is a real commitment, man. If you're not ready for that commitment, you gotta be. Think about it, man. You're dead for a long time. That's number one premise. Any thoughts about that? There,
well, it's like space.
Swelly Rashi.
Well, it's like space. Space never ends, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I get caught up in those thoughts, like space just never, ever ends. And if there's a wall somewhere in space, what's on the other side? Well, death is the same thing. As long as there's time, you're dead. So it's like overwhelming to think about. The minute you're dead for infinity.
That's right. The clock starts on forever.
It starts on forever. But something you did, like in that cemetery, I love to do that as well. There's a little town here called Lakefield, just south of here. And sometimes when Doll's shopping, I'll just wander into the local churches there, right on the corner. And the headstones there are fascinating because there was some kind of a plague or something in this area back in the 1800s. And there's all sorts of infants buried there. It's sad, very sad, like 18 months, 2 years old. Like, there's a lot of them. And it just gets your mind going, right? Like, these kids got sick, and there was no medicine, and there was no way to treat them as there is now, and the heartbreak that caused at the time. Yet at the time, people realized that this was just part of life, losing infants, as it isn't now. And your mind just runs wild.
Well, I knew you'd love this as a premise because I did think, you and I have had this conversation, but as I was riding along, I thought, Fred will find this fascinating. Things like, the plots where the husband and wife are buried the same, and then there's some simple headstones, and then there's some elaborate, I don't know what kind of stone it is, Dan, you'd probably know, but like very, very expensive, like some really fancy,
granite, probably.
Granite, thank you for that granite word. I was thinking of granite, but, very expensive. And the second part of this was, what shouldn't there be a limit? Like, here's the thing. This cemetery, which borders Prince Edward on one side, Bloor on the other, and I don't know what's south of it, in Toronto is some of the most, it's probably very, very expensive land. How long, the dead are taking up a lot of space, is my point. The dead are taking up a lot of space. And some of these gravestones, or headstones, or whatever they're called, are over 100 years old. And it made me think, the people that knew those people, most of them are dead now, too. So how does it work in the cemetery world, where how long are you supposed to keep that there for? Forever? Anyone know the answer to that question?
Well, we haven't. I mean, it's still considered sacred ground, and you don't screw with that. I mean, there have been situations where highways need to be built, or, the land needs to be expropriated, and they, with a lot of dignity and care, move bodies. Hey, listen, you're going north on the 427 onto the 401. Have you ever noticed that little cemetery right in the middle of the overpass, or right in the middle?
I know where it is.
Well, that just shows you there. It's like you don't screw with that stuff.
But you said sacred.
And we haven't moved on from that.
But you said the word sacred. I mean, I understand that has a religious connotations, but I know this sounds like a facetious premise, but I did start to think, like, at some point, somebody that passed away, and there's many of them in this cemetery, in the early 1900s, who have been dead over 100 years, so any of their loved ones that would be aware of them, visiting them, keeping their memory alive, a lot of those people have died. So what are you saying exactly? Well, I guess what I'm saying is, is there no mechanism where after a certain period of time, we move you and we
bring in the bulldozers and build a condo, is what you're saying?
Not necessarily.
What are you saying?
Not like we need to get rid of it so we can do something else with it. But I am kind of curious, like, how long, when you have a contract with a cemetery, is it just there for the rest of time? Is my question.
Yeah, but you got to appreciate how this stuff evolved, right? Back when those people were buried, there was no shortage of land, you know. That was probably rural at the time, some of those cemeteries, actually. You know, so they didn't think that far ahead. Now, you know, things change. Plots are smaller. There's, cremations, and you don't take as much spots or space up, and on and on and on. You can't sort of change the ruls. Yeah, when you get a plot,
I agree.
That's forever.
Yeah, of course,
that's
that makes
forever.
sense. And what you're saying makes sense. And what I'm saying is just they call it a little thought experiment. I'm just curious. Dan, go ahead.
Well, there are some cemeteries in other countries, especially in Europe, that actually rent out plots for 100 years.
Well, there you go.
You got it for $100.
See?
$100.
You got it for $100. I like it.
In North America here, a lot of stuff happens in Europe because of population and density before it happens here, and that may come here eventually. Makes sense to have that. But, my grandparents, you talk about dead forever. My grandparents are in Pine Hill Cemetery. That's on Kennedy Road between Kennedy and Birchmount in Scarborough, south of Eglinton, whatever it is. And it's funny, my grandmother's been there since 1967. And I remember the time being in high school and stuff, he'd only been dead 5, 6, 7 years, and now it's going to be, 50 some odd years. And I often think about that. He's been laying there for 50 some odd years now. He's almost been as dead as long as he was alive. It's weird.
Well,
and my grandmother's beside him now. She died some years later. But
my mother and father. I almost said this. I almost said mom and dad. You ever know some people talk about their parents as though they're your parents too?
Yeah, I've never done that.
Yeah, and me neither. You know what I'm talking about, Dan? Where someone will talk about their mother and father, and they'll say, "Well, mom and dad." And I'm like, "Well, they're not my mom and dad." Yeah. But my mother and father.
All you have to do is add the word "my."
Yeah, exactly.
Just say my mom, my dad, my mom and dad.
But
That's
you know what I'm talking about? Because people do that all the time. They go, "Oh, well, mom and dad." What mom and dad? So Lou and Luba Glassman are laying in the Jewish cemetery. Oh, shh. Don't say Jews. They're laying in a cemetery in Winnipeg, and I was there when Auntie Ruby passed away. Yeah, that's right, Dan. Remember, I went to the Auntie Ruby funeral.
Yeah, wouldn't visit her and she died.
That's right. I never visited her in life, but I went there in death and froze. But mom and dad are in this same area where Ruby is now. Well, let's say like this cemetery, no one's going to I can't imagine somebody from my family, my immediate family, visiting that gravesite. So I guess I'm still trying to figure out, what do you have a contract? Does that cemetery have a contract with my parents that they're just there and that land won't be disturbed and no one else can use that for how long is my question? 100 years, 10 years? I don't know.
I guess it depends on the facility, but I've never heard of term limits on being buried.
Well, there's, like Dan just said, if they're doing it in Europe at some point, they're going to have to start doing it here.
Well, at some point, I guess, but most of the cemeteries here too, any new cemeteries, if in fact there are any, would be in the outlying areas. They're not putting any new cemeteries downtown. Let's put it that way.
I'll tell you, Bradley, the guy who knows is Brad Jones from Ridley Funeral Home, and he is going to be a guest on our program at the end of this summer. Back to summer, though, if you or someone you care for has high body temperatures and are confused, has stopped sweating, or becomes unconscious, those are the signs that you should look for. You check on the two of you there. And what I love is the instructions they give you. While waiting for help, here's what you should do. Cool the person right away. Okay, thanks for that. No, I was going to put them in a sauna. Move them to a cool place. Apply cold water to large areas of the skin. And most importantly, fan the person.
Move them to a cool place. Does that mean like a funky patio? Or
that's right. Get them to a bistro.
Some neat bistro. Move them to a real.
That's
cool
right.
place.
Get them to a bistro or a hipster brunch place. Just you got to Google like the latest gourmet restaurant in your area.
Yeah.
And then, but the instructions, fan them. Just
Yeah.
Listen, when I took my medical degree, we didn't have to be told to fan somebody that was having.
Yeah, and you know what I find somewhat pretentious?
No.
Do you ever notice when it really gets hot, people have those own little personal battery fans, and they're walking down the street with the fan going in their face? Have you ever seen one of those?
Oh, yeah.
I find that, and listen, I understand if it's giving you comfort in the moment. I just find it a little pretentious. I don't know. It reminds me of like royalty fanning their faces or something. I don't know.
That would be
That's
a category.
Missed promo opportunity right there.
It's a missed what?
Huh?
Promo opportunity right there. We should have Humble and Fred fans.
Humble and Fred personal fans.
Yeah.
Well, or what we could do is just give people pieces of cardboard with our face on it. Just that what you just said, and I don't know if that's exactly it, but that would be in a category of human behavior. And maybe I'll give you guys time to think about this some other day. But human behavior displayed that would be a deal breaker for you to be friends with that person. For instance,
Might be.
I'm saying that would be up there for me. Like if I met somebody for the first time at a soiree or a gathering, and they were fanning themselves with a battery-operated personal fan, I don't know. That would be enough for me at that moment. Maybe. And what if that person turned out to be a great person? I don't know. But would you? Yes, the judging would happen, Dan. The judging would happen.
I just, because it takes one of your hands out of commission while you're walking along. Not a big deal, but, and I don't know how much relief can that provide. So I don't know if it's a novelty thing or, but it doesn't bug me. It just seems odd to me, that whole exercise.
This could be a little brace around your neck that you can hang and then put the fan in that and it would blow up at you. And then you'd have both hands.
Or you could get one of those like medical halos attached to your head and then have the fan pointed at your face.
Yeah.
Dan, did you get the air conditioning fixed in your car?
I did, just in time, as a matter of fact, yes.
In time for the heat dome.
That's the one place, man, that, you gotta.
No, I know.
You gotta have air conditioning.
It's funny you say that.
Because when we were kids,
didn't have air conditioning.
Never had air conditioning.
We had windows.
Yeah.
When Dan
we used to have those triangular windows. Remember the triangular windows?
The useless triangle windows that opened.
And triangle one, as if that would put...
and gave zero venting. When you visited me this winter in Mexico, I had that rental car, but prior to that, I was staying at David and sister-in-law Ruth's place, and she has an SUV. She still has it. And she very graciously let me use it. And I used it for a month in incredible heat, and it had no air conditioning. It had to get fixed. The Freon something had gone wrong with it. To your point, driving in really hot weather, even without air conditioning in the truck, was brutal. But all you can do is open the windows, which makes it worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I could have been a victim of heat stroke. I did not notice any swelling or rash. But sometimes I cramp for no reason. Sometimes I'm just crampy anyway.
Crampy. Even after we were married, the first couple of cars we had didn't have air conditioning. It was weird.
Well,
I had
Dan,
I had a Jetta and a Rabbit. Neither one of them had air conditioning.
Dan,
at least had a bug.
When you had your first car back in the 1920s with the crank on it,
yeah.
Obviously, those didn't have air conditioning.
Didn't have air conditioning. No.
Some of them didn't have roofs.
I don't think my first two cars had air conditioning. Or my third car. Yeah. No,
my first car was an Austin Mini. It definitely did not have air conditioning.
It would have been as big as a car.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, by the way, Howard, you would have been proud of me yesterday. I was over at Dan's, and his lady friend Lisa was there, and she said something about her dad being 85 years old, and I said, imagine that. Your dad and your boyfriend the same age. You would have been proud of me.
I'm proud of you, right? I'm very proud of you. Very proud of you.
The same age. So to keep the campaign going.
I love that, man. I don't know if you, there's so much to get to, but it's because you mentioned age, or are we doing the Dan's 100 years old thing? Did you see the story that our correspondent Julie Fleming sent us? She sent us so much stuff over the last 3 or 4 days about Trump and Bill Maher and Seinfeld. But one of the things that stuck out to me is Bill Belichick, who's 72 years old, sort of like around your age, Dan, is dating, check this one, a 24-year-old, and has been dating her for a couple of years. What do you think of that there, Frederick?
I think it's a bit greasy. Like, if he's not Bill Belichick, she has no interest in a 72-year-old man. So from that aspect, I mean, honestly, a 72-year-old man it wouldn't be easy to service a 24-year-old. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh, no, I know.
What the needs of a 24-year-old woman in her prime would be.
Yeah, I know firsthand. It's not easy. It takes a lot. But
you weren't 72.
No, my age difference with lady friend though was 24 years. But this is 72. What is it, Dan? So they've been dating since he was 70 and she was 22. So what is that? 38, 40. 48.
To me, it's just not genuine. I'm sorry. That's the way I look at it. And not to say it couldn't be.
Right.
But on first pass, it's like, that's not genuine. She's just caught up in I know what he's caught up in. I totally understand what he's caught up in. But her, it's like,
it's 48 years.
Cheap.
Well, the thing is, I would say yes, but I'd be hypocritical to a point because... Yes, for sure, she's enamored with the fact that he's Bill Belichick. But it's been a couple of years. It's not a couple of months. So, and Dan also had a slightly younger girlfriend for a while. Does everyone know that? How much younger was your midlife crisis? How old was that?
I don't know, like 18 or something. 18 years.
18 years. So,
guys, you guys were in your low to mid 50s when this was going on.
Yeah, I was 49, 50 to 54.
It's a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Once you get into your 60s and now pushing into your 70s, whole different ball game.
But the reason I say I don't want to be hypocritical, only in so much that, I took a lot of grief for it, a lot of it from you. Very funny. I mean, I took a lot of it was a lot. But when people found out that lady friend and I, at one point we'd been together for over 5 years, and so that we would be on vacation and people would see me. Oh, is this your daughter? And that kind of bullshit. But then we were like a regular couple. And all I'm saying is, yes, it's fun to make fun of this, but who knows? After a couple of years, the novelty of him being Bill Belichick is definitely worn off.
Yeah, but see that, I don't look at your situation or Dan's, the brief period he was in the same situation. I didn't find that really disingenuous because it's not like, oh, yeah, she's just after Howard because he's worth several $1 million or he's this or he's that. You know what I mean? There's not that dimension to it. So it was genuine. Sometimes young women fall for older men. And again, you guys were still... back then you still had some vitality, okay?
Yeah. Those were the days. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Oh, yes.
This is just, she's a cheerleader and you just wonder where, what her motives are and where she wants to be and how she thinks Bill Belichick can help her get there. And
100%.
That's all.
Yep.
And that's an awful, and I just wonder what her parents, I'm always put myself in that position. What does her dad think?
Her dad probably thinks, hey, it's the Bills head coach, Bill Belichick.
Well, he's no head coach right now.
No, I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, her dad's probably like, this is cool.
The Pats,
sorry. Yeah, when I was dating a lady friend, because her parents had her when they were really young, even younger than you and Delise. So when I was 50, her mom and dad were the same age as me. I think I was just maybe a year older than her mom, same age as her dad. Yeah, it was pretty weird. Yeah, well, that's pretty weird.
That's got to be weird for parents. And you can't help but appreciate parents are thinking, my young daughter, is she really giving herself a fair chance at not at life, but as a normal ascension through life, like, how being hooked up with a guy in his mid-50s, what is she not going to have or not going to do that she might if she'd have been with someone her age?
No, for sure.
Well, let's say he, makes it to 82.
That would Belichick?
Yeah. That would put her at 32, right?
34 now. She's 24 now.
Oh, 20. Okay.
So they've been together since she was 22.
So she's, there's a whole new section of, life to be had there, and they're pretty much all the options are still open at that age.
From that perspective, yeah. No, I get that. No, I was just referring to Howard. He was saying it was weird because he was the same age as her parents.
I remember the first time
and I don't care who you are, that's got to be weird that your kid's going with somebody your age.
I remember the first time I had dinner with her father. And it turns out he was a big Humble and Fred fan, which was weird. And he and his wife were separated, divorced for years, and so he thought it was great. She was not a Humble and Fred fan, and turned out to not be a Howard Glassman fan either. So had that going for me.
Yeah, to bring that dynamic into a relationship, I mean, forget them, but you two, to have that dynamic that you're conscious of. Like, honestly, if you went to family gatherings of hers,
which I did.
Walking into a room must have been weird because of course you were thinking, oh no, what are other people thinking?
Yeah, add that on top of my normal anxiety about what other people are thinking.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And how many rooms did you turn on its head during that era?
How about you, Dan? I mean, were you close enough?
You're not answering that question.
Oh countless. Christmas, Easter, all those things. Mm-hmm. All of it was always weird. They were big family gatherings, 16, 18, 20 people for Thanksgiving and things, and there was me, old Howie. Just,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dan, how about you? Did you ever go to any family functions, or was it always just sort of...
Especially when Amanda sat at the kids' table for Christmas.
Didn't last that long.
That's right. Honey, you go over there with the other kids. I'm sorry, Dan, it didn't last that long?
No, it didn't last that long, so I didn't get into that, yeah. I didn't have to have any family things that I ended up at.
Well, I did. And like I said, the city people... It was interesting, too. Interesting, was it? The city people, so her father's side of the family, were just sort of more like, yeah, it's cool, it's Humble Howard, and we would go and have downtown dinners together. But the country people, the mother's side of the family, did not take to the How Man. Did not take to the How Man at all.
To be fair, too, you have to, because having been around your relationship, I saw how, again, genuine it was and how much this young woman actually was into you, loved you. I saw that. And again, I could, maybe spend a month with Bill Belichick and this 24-year-old and come away with the same feeling. I doubt it, but...
Well, that's why I said it would be hypocritical of me if I didn't see some of that, because anyone that was around Lady Friend and I for longer than, would go, oh, this is like any other relationship. Yeah, it was cool, and it was fun at first. And, when I first started going out with her, a lot of my friends your age would say things like, what's it like, being with a 25-year-old? And my joke always was, everyone thinks they can hit major league pitching until that ball's coming across the plate. Fast. Mm-hmm. Things happen fast. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. You get used to it after a while. The pitches start to slow down. You can start to see the seams.
And it's funny with Bill Belichick. I would say he's slightly overweight. He always looks a bit tired or exhausted to me, too.
Yeah,
just
grumpy.
Yeah, whatever that is. And you know what? It's 72. Let's be honest. Your plumbing at 72 doesn't work the way it did at 42 or 30.
He probably doesn't even have a prostate or something. I don't know.
Or even 52, right? So, again, there's drugs, obviously, and a lot of guys use them in that situation, and I hope she's good with that. And it just, I don't know. Just seems odd.
Well, there you go. That's the opening.
Well, what about Rupert Murdoch? Just at 91, married a woman in her 60s, right?
Yeah,
Look
Rupert
at that age
Murdoch
discrepancy. Now tell me she didn't marry this 91-year-old guy for anything but money. Come on.
Well, maybe companionship and all kinds of things. You know?
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun hanging out with a 91-year-old guy all the time.
Before we let Dan go, I got to say that it's been a while since I've done an event and met listeners in person. You know, we did our Christmas party. So that's a few months ago, and we met everyone at Kelsey's. It was amazing. So Friday, I hosted, along with Sherpa J. Bondi, a listener get-together, kind of a golf clinic thing. And there was maybe 14 or 15 of Tim Niblets, the OG Sherpa, of his clients. But most of the people there were people that were Humble and Fred listeners that became Tim Niblett and Jay Bondi's clients. So it was very, very nice. A lot of nice people that I met. But the reason, and I could tell you all about the day, but the reason I brought it up now is one of the stories we talked about last week on the show. That tomorrow when we do our emails. By the way, this week we're only doing 2 shows because they got a golf thing. So no show Wednesday. So tomorrow we're going to read some emails. So a lot of the emails were about this incident that I mentioned on the program last week that happened to me whilst I was in the shower.
Right.
The reason I'm trying to bring it together with these 2 things, which is meeting listeners, so you'll love this. I pull into the golf course and get my clubs, and I walk over to the area we had set aside for the Tim Niblett, the Sherpa Golf Clinic, and there's 3 or 4 of our listeners there, adult people, and all of them to a person go, hey. And after they say, hey, nice to meet you, Howard, they all go, so you shit yourself in the shower. And I got to tell you, when you tell a story on our little program to your friends Freddie and Danny, is one level of like, yeah, I'll just do this. It's a bit, whatever. But when you meet other human beings in person, it's different. When they say, so tell me, did you shit in the shower? And I'm like, hi, I just met you. Oh, yeah.
Well, your name come up in a similar vein up here.
Oh, did it?
Yes, it did, Howard. Because Dan, with his new unit there.
His new unit? What's wrong with his old unit?
His new unit. His lovely new trailer.
His trailer, I see.
Issues you have to work through, and he had a little plumbing issue where somehow his shower ended up draining into his blackwater tank. Your blackwater tank is, where your poop goes. So at one point, Dan, the blackwater started coming up through the shower drain a bit.
Yeah.
Easily fixed. It did, but we were talking about this, and a guy in the park here, Jim Miller, who listens to the show, said, oh, that'd be good for Howard. He wouldn't even notice.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I've met Jim. He's a nice man. Yeah, it definitely made me laugh when you meet other human beings who enjoy your program, and that's the first thing that they said.
Hey, we were talking a couple of days ago. Were you aware of the tornado warnings that were in Ontario and Quebec like last week? Like I think it was Thursday or so.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah,
I was only aware in so much. I think you brought it up to me. But I wasn't. I wasn't taking shelter. No, I was not.
Well, I thought it was weird because I was away from this place during a period of that time when the warnings came out, and I was connecting with my son and making sure that he was okay because he tends to be here when those kind of events are happening. And then I asked Fred about how he felt about the wind that came through and how much rain had happened, and the warnings and everything, how he made it through that, and he was like, "Well, I didn't really notice." He was out in his Zata room. He was outside and really had no idea that any of this was swirling around him.
Are you concerned about our ignorance, or?
Well, I for a man who's in touch with the world and is always reading his phone and saying, "No, they could," especially with the weather.
It may have been the angle. I was watching the hockey game, and I heard it rain. Like you can really hear it, on the Florida room roof. And I heard it for briefly, and then a wind gust, like one, and I thought, oh, that's all and that was it. And then the next day, I'm getting all these reports from people right in this area saying how wicked it was for several minutes, but not here.
You didn't even get the phone alert?
No.
No, I didn't either. I definitely would have remembered that. Until you had brought it up, I'm trying to think. I know I played golf on.
Played through?
I played through it. If there were a tornado warning, I played through it because I played Wednesday and I played Thursday. But I don't recall.
Night, right?
Was it Thursday night into
Thursday
Friday,
night?
Dan?
Yeah,
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I didn't hear about the heat dome until 45 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
That's what they're calling it.
And you call yourself a weather aficionado. I've been saving this for a week, so I'm just going to play it. This is in honor of all the fathers. Happy Father's Day, by the way, boys.
Thank you.
Here's a great dad joke. Have a listen.
Oh, a chicken staring at lettuce. Chicken sees a salad.
What do you call a chicken staring at lettuce? Chicken sees a salad. Get that, Dan?
I did, yeah.
The chicken
I put it together, thanks. Yeah.
The chicken sees a salad.
All right.
And then
it
goes,
Got it. Yeah, bagat. Yeah.
On the note of Father's Day,
yes.
I saw yesterday, I believe, CP24, the news outlet, asked local politicians what important lessons were imparted by their fathers that they would reference. And I was reading through it, and I thought, oh, sweet. And then I was thinking, maybe I should ask these guys that question. What important lessons were imparted?
Could you say it, and speaking into the microphone, because you got quiet there. I couldn't.
Well, because it's a quiet thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to pump up your volume then.
Okay, pump up the volume. Anyway.
So what important
lessons were imparted by your fathers, your takeaways?
That's a great question.
It's a hard one when you think
I'm trying to think about, my dad had a lot of, there were a lot of rules in our house. And my dad had a lot of rules of which to sort of live by. And, I'm trying to think, I'm not hesitating to try and think of something funny. I'm trying to think of something that would apply as something I learned from my father about being a father, or a life lesson. Mm-hmm. What about you? Did you have one? Maybe you could start, and that would inspire us.
I thought about it. Yeah, no, just, sort of generous sharing of his time and his expertise. You know what I mean? He was always... And again, I haven't lived up to that nearly as much as he was. But, a lot, honestly, like Dan, willing to help anybody at any given moment with anything they needed, Yeah, and just generous.
I would say
he generous with, and he didn't have a lot.
I think what I learned from my father was less direct, like, here's something you should remember. What I did learn from watching him hate his job for his entire life. Mm-hmm. What I think he passed on to me was that you should do what you want to do to make yourself happy. You should do something that, like I'm the only one in my family that didn't have to go to university. I mean, I barely got through grade 12. Mm-hmm. But I definitely noticed that my dad was not passionate about working in a tiny menswear store. But he did it because that was what was sort of his lot in life, and then to support his little family, that's what he did. So I learned that you should do what you're passionate about, and it kind of inspired me to sort of do this. Like I made a decision very early that I wanted to. I knew this. I knew instinctively that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. If I can just, before Dan goes, that's an interesting spin. Very interesting.
Is it interesting? Is it interesting?
No, because I've been in New York City with you, and you showed me your dad's picture on the New York
in the American Academy
School. So your dad had that within him, that seed.
Yeah.
That obviously frustrated him over his life. You know, I came from a family, and my dad he never ever complained about his job because he was of the mindset, I had a good job 5 days a week. It had benefits, you know what I mean? I'm providing for my family. It's just sort of what your mindset is going into that. And that sort of platform that he provided, and my mom too, enabled me to sort of pursue anything I wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
But he never, 47 years he went into Loblaws and, was a manager, of assembling orders or whatever he did, and never ever complained about it. Yeah. It was just his job, and he did it. Talked about the guys at work.
My dad never complained about it. I just know that he was quietly frustrated. There was a lot of, there was a lot of, I'm not a psychologist, my brother is, but there was a lot of unfulfilled tension. For people who don't know, my dad briefly after World War II went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. It's like, what? So he goes from the late 40s and the early 50s, from living in New York, trying to be an actor, to somehow ending up selling leisure suits in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Yeah, believe me, that had to frustrate him. Well, it was before Dan. The thing I learned from Dan's father, Minister Cliff, was Dan's father was the first religious person that I could actually have conversations about religion. This was when I was in my teens. This is how long I've been questioning it. But so Dan's father was awesome about that. But the other thing that Dan's father did for me and Dan was to teach us how to make a martini.
That is true. Yes.
It was so cool. When we were living together in Calgary, Cliff came to visit us, and he was like, "Boys," and he gathered us around the island in the kitchen, and he showed us how to do it. And I was like, "This is fucking cool." Minister Minister Geeb is showing us how to mix booze.
Yeah, he and my Uncle Bob were big on the cocktails.
Yeah, man. Sure. What about you, Nan? What did Minister Cliff pass on?
I think probably I think of various instances, it's more about is sharing his understanding of other people. I guess that's in the compassion category. Mm-hmm. An understanding of how other people's lives go, whether it be, other religions. Because I remember early on, there was some sort of a thing that he did with a synagogue somewhere. And then just throughout, there's various in his, I wouldn't call it ministering, but other, understanding, talking about people who are gay and how that's a difficult path to this was in the, the early 60s, how much of a difficult path that is if that's your thing. And, just having the compassion, understanding, and sharing that with us. And that, I think that was a benefit to all of us, all four of us kids that came up.
My dad used to have this saying, and I've said it before, and it's, he didn't coin the phrase, but it's like, he wouldn't say shit if his mouth was full of it. Right? You've heard that before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what, when I look at Dan Duran, and maybe he got that from what he just said from his father. Because, you and I can play in that, that playground of,
What's the playground we play?
We might be critical of other people.
Us? Little Howie and Freddie? No.
Yeah, we might be critical. We might have a comment or two. We might have an opinion on people and things.
Well,
where Dan,
yes.
Dan, honestly, never, ever has anything bad to say about anyone. He doesn't.
If our mouths were full of shit, we'd just be going around, our mouths are full of shit. Here's a question. Let me return this. Let me return this volley. So that's what we, may have learned or gleaned from our fathers. what do you think our kids would say they learned from us?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a tough one.
I mean, because I know one thing. My kids can tell you dozens of things. You know, we call them daddy's little sermons. But dozens of things I've said to them, sayings over the years. And both of them have learned this lesson very well. Now, the older one learned it earlier than the younger one. But the younger one figured it out. And the lesson that because it came from, and Dan, you'll relate to this, but it came from a lifetime of being on sets, on being in being in situations where people are being creative, and I had to learn it the hard way, but I learned it. And one of the things that they will tell their kids they learned from me is that in a world where competence is assumed, meaning if you're at some company and you're working there, it's because your competence in that job is assumed. That's why you were hired. So I used to say to them, in a world where competence is assumed, life really comes down to who do you want to spend all day around? And I said to my kids, I said, that's as important a skill as whether you can do the job. It's sometimes more important, especially in our business, Dan, where sometimes you're on sets with people for 10 and 12 hours. You know, one of the reasons I talked about this last week about being one of the first people that hired Fred's son, Danny. And I've spent tens of hours on sets with that guy. And you know what it's like? You know, the first few hours it's great, the novelty wears off. But when you're doing a shoot and now it's 8 o'clock at night and everyone's a little bit frayed, I would go over to Danny and we would just make ridiculous comments to each other, and I'd make him laugh and he'd make me laugh. So I know what kind of guy he is because of that situation. So that's what my kids would say. Did that give you guys time to think of something?
Oh, yeah. No, and tied to that, I think at basic, I used to say to my kids all the time, because, you know, as you now get into the working world and you would walk into a room or walk into an office or have to deal with people that might seem impressive, and then you find out maybe they're not, sort of going to what you say, Howard. I used to say, well, bullshit baffles brains.
Yeah.
It's sad, but some of the greatest bullshitters, you know, are in the best position and they don't deserve it.
Yeah, we worked for some of those guys.
Absolutely. So just be aware, bullshit baffles brain. And if the odd time you have to dish a little bullshit to get what you need or want, then, you know, it might not be the greatest attribute, but at the same time, it's part of the game. So, I don't know.
And for me, I think it's a lot of the, it's by example. I would assume that, I mean, I've always encouraged Colton to pursue his passion, whatever it is he's passionate about, and never been a judge about whatever it is. And I always said that, hey, I don't care what you do. If you're into it, that's totally fine with me. So there's that. And also, I think just by example is, you know, at the level of competence that you're talking about in this industry, there has to be, you know, there's certain standards that we, you know, have to there's a certain standard, otherwise you're not going to make it in this industry. And I think he's paid attention to that he's, you know, very concerned about the work that he does.
The thing is, though, when you're on a set with people or you're in an office with people, when I say in a world where competence is assumed, if you're on that set, we all got hired because, you know, we can do that job. What matters more is, are you, you know, and I learned a little bit of this from my brother Steve. I remember I got hired on a TV show in Vancouver. It's my very first time. And my brother at that point had been a cameraman, and he had just graduated to director, but he'd been on sets for a few years. And I remember he said this to me. He said, dude, you got to be nice to those people. You got to be nice to the people in that environment, because those cameramen and camera women, they can make or break your day. And he says, you want those people on your side. And I never forgot that. And it was true. You know, especially in our business, you want the people at reception to be, and everybody in the office, you want them, and believe me, I know I came to some of that late, but it turned out to be true. Those are the people you want to be cheering for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, very good. There's a very good discussion. Look at us.
Yes.
We've gone from shitting in the shower to talking about parenthood. All right. Well, Dan, it's just you today. So why don't you give, we have a few minutes to do some business. come back in 20. We'll do some news and we'll get out of here. Tomorrow, if you're a Facebook watcher on Tuesday's show, yeah, it's because of golf. But we're going to start early, if that matters to you. For most people, it won't. Most people just download the show. But there's a few people that like to watch it. And tomorrow at around 7 Eastern is when we're going to start. Let me just open this. And then why don't we take care of a little bit of business, my friend.
Yeah. How about those Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, man.
Howard. How about those Edmonton Oilers? They pummel the Florida Panthers 8-1 there on your Saturday night.
How do you explain that?
It's not uncommon. They were facing elimination. Florida could win the Stanley Cup, but knows if they lose, they can take it back home and win it there, which is the position they will be in, tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to win the cup at home, and I fully believe they will. Just one of those quirky things. The 8-1 score, a bit odd, but it was almost like, the Oilers got in cruise control there, and Florida literally gave up. And their goaltender, Bobrovsky, didn't have a very good game. So that's hockey. Anyway, going into Game 5 tomorrow night, where the Panthers can wrap it up. They are the favorite at minus 142. So yes, it costs you $142 to win 100. That's the situation. So a pretty good favorite. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what transpires. Whether you're a sports bettor, a horse racing fan, a poker, a casino player, Bodog, your number one source of online gambling entertainment. From their industry-leading odds, world-class sportsbook, to their fully loaded casino and racebook. They've been providing Canadian players with an unparalleled gaming experience since 1994.
The number of items that contain boron in homes, in trailers and homes, is surprising. Mm-hmm. You'll be surprised. Roofing materials. Are you surprised? Are you surprised?
No, not at all. It's everywhere.
Wallboard, paint, fiberglass insulation, and cellulose insulation all contain boron. When used as a treatment for construction materials such as wood, plastic, bricks, pipes, and wires, boron helps to protect from mold, fungus, and insects. Oh, I could go on and surprise you more, but let me just tell you about this company, Boron One. And of course, we make no claims about stock prices, but you might want to look at it. All we're saying is you might want to have a boo. Give it a boo. What if I was one of those people that said things like that?
I don't think we need to worry about that.
Have a look at Boron One by checking out their website, boron1.com. You might even just go to the page that I was reading from. What is boron? You'll find out for yourself at boron1.com. I was just thinking of a story very quickly about, my daughters. And as I mentioned, Charlie learned that lesson about, Charlie is just like, Charlie reminds me a little bit of Danny, your son. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the other day about, when you run into people that have worked with Danny like me, that nobody has a bad word to say about the kid. He's just such a sweet guy. When Charlie's like that. Charlie is this like, I've met people that work with her, some of her New York friends, and some people that I have a friend that hired her. And she's just that's her personality. It's just a sweet kid. She's not a pushover, but she is she's an easy hang. My youngest is a little bit more like daddy. Has gotten better, but at one time was not an easy hang. Mm-hmm. I've ever told you a story. This was, again, post-divorce, a lot of acrimony, a lot of upset in the family. I used to have my kids half the time. And then as they got older, they would meet and have dinner with me once or twice a week. So one day we're on Queen Street. This is during the worst time. Well, I think a lot of parents go through this with their teenagers becoming young people. And, turns out we don't know everything. So we're on Queen Street and Spencer's just being, really, we're having being very sort of shitty to me. And I decide that I don't want to spend any more time with them that night. So I say, listen, you guys, I'm going to let you go to dinner on your own. I'm just not feeling it. I'm gonna take off and go home. And I go home. And a couple days later, I'm talking to Charlie, my older daughter. And I said, I wish things were different with Spencer and I. And now they're great. But at the time, I said to her, I wish things were different for Spencer and I. I just get it's very tense whenever we're together. And here's what my daughter said. Daddy, she said, it's a hard world when you're hard in the world. And I thought, fuck, that is so true. Mm-hmm. That's what I taught. That's what my daughter learned. And I thought, well, my work here is done. It's a hard world when you're hard on the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, there's a lot to that.
And I took a long time to find that out. I didn't know that all. I didn't really understand it, but I learned it. Anyway, there you go. On Friday at that listener thing, we had a great time, and we were having lunch after. And I was sitting with a bunch of listeners. And we were talking. Everyone was having a good time, having some, food and drinks. And I revealed to them our big surprise.
Oh, yes.
I said, here's a little inside scoop.
Mm-hmm.
Freddie and I have been talking about this for a couple of months. They all loved it. And you know what they loved? You know what they loved?
What?
They loved what the branding.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. It's cool to.
Did you show them the presentation?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's why I thought I'd tell you, because, it was kind of like a live focus group of your primary users, because these are people that listen to the program. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, man, they dug it. They all got it right away, and they all thought the presentation was in keeping with their Humble and Fred's. So that's that. By the way, if the Oilers come back and win this series, they're down 3-1 now. If they did, it's only happened one other time in NHL history, or maybe I shouldn't say that. The last time it happened, 1942. Do you know who came back and won?
Yeah, it was the Leafs.
Yes,
but it hasn't happened again since then. I guess you're talking a Stanley Cup final.
Stanley Cup final, coming back from a 3-1 deficit.
Okay, yeah, I knew the Leafs were the first to do it.
All right, might have been the last to do it too.
Yeah, I can't dispute that. I'm getting mixed up because other teams since then have done it in the playoffs, come back from 3-0 to win, but maybe not in a final. Obviously, that's the difference. Yeah, it was the Toronto Maple Leafs back in the glory days,
1942.
Mm-hmm. Back when you had a 1 in 6 chance of winning a Stanley Cup.
That's right.
Now it's 1 in 30. What is it? 32? I've lost track.
So have I. Yeah. I watched a 10-minute piece on YouTube the other day about the career of my favorite hockey player ever, Bobby Orr. A little asterisk now, of course, because he loves Trump. But they showed a lot of footage that I hadn't seen, and this is prior, like when he was he played in the Oshawa Generals, and then, of course, became a star with the Boston Bruins. We've all seen footage from those times where hockey players aren't wearing helmets.
Mm-hmm. Goalies aren't wearing masks.
Mm-hmm. And the first few masks they wore were just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't recall, and you probably did, is that no hockey players wore helmets. So there's Bobby Orr playing, like, they've got some footage from him playing like midget bantam and then playing junior for the Generals. Nobody's wearing helmets. It's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, and that's why, you get the old timers that say, hockey's not as good as it used to be back in the old days. Well, which is just complete bullshit. Because a player couldn't survive without a helmet now. A goalie couldn't survive, literally, life without a mask. A goalie in the NHL today without a mask, there would be death. So it just shows you the caliber of hockey, the pace and the strength of hockey back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. That there was, a couple of incidents, but basically, how does a goalie play his entire career without a mask? You know what I mean?
And what was it? Is it because they couldn't they hadn't figured out how to raise the puck?
Well, they raised the puck, but they didn't have the strength and the power and the equipment that they do now. Like those sticks now that bend almost in half and literally catapult the puck. Have you seen those things? Which adds to the speed and the strength and all that nonsense. Yeah. But a guy like Bobby Orr, if you had an asset like Bobby Orr now, can you imagine putting on the ice without a helmet? Come on.
Yeah, and then I'm going to get off this quickly, but I'll just tell you, I watched some of those end-to-end rushes, and I remember it reminded me why I loved him as a kid, because it was so unusual to see a defenseman do what he was doing.
Right.
All those points, all those goals, and just going end to end. And, there was talk apparently when he first came in the league, they were going to put him on forward. And I thought, I guess so, because he was such a goal scorer. But the reason they kept him on defense was because he was an excellent defenseman. That part I'd forgotten. Like, he was really good at that position. I mean, defensively, obviously. Anyway, so that was cool.
Well, they did that in reverse, I believe, with the great Red Kelly. I think he came into the league as a centerman and then ended up as a defenseman.
Really?
Yeah. And then I've heard talk of, for years they've talked about Morgan Riley of the Maple Leafs, as his defensive skill diminishes, maybe he should play up on the wing. So it's not unprecedented. If you're, you have certain offensive talents. But yeah, Bobby Orr won scoring titles as a defenseman. What would he, if he had played forward, he would have had Gretzky numbers.
Well, the year that he set the NHL assist record, like in the early 70s, it wasn't broken until Gretzky did it, 10 or 15 years later.
Mm-hmm. Well, you look at Connor McDavid in the Stanley Cup final. He just set a record, beat Gretzky's record for most assists in a playoff year. I think it's 35 or something.
Wow.
Probably a majority of the players in the league, 35 assists on the season would be a good year.
Well, and is this Edmonton team? I haven't watched any of the games. Is it just are the Panthers just that much better, or is this a team from Edmonton that this is good experience for them, and like the Oilers of old, they'll come back next year and whatever, or not?
Maybe, but it's like it's everything the Maple Leafs aren't. It's all about balance,
right?
Good goaltending, solid defense, good balance of skill and grit on the forward lines. Florida's got it all, top to bottom. And again, I wouldn't write too much into what happened the other night with Edmonton. I fully expect the Panthers to win the Cup tomorrow night at home. They'll be stinging from that loss. They'll be at home. They can win it in front of their fans. I believe it'll happen.
I've seen some stuff online about how late the season's gone, how late it goes. Today's the 17th of June while we're recording this. If they win tomorrow night, it'll be the 18th of June, because that's the day after the 17th, in case you didn't know.
Well, Game 7 would be the 24th, a week today. So June 24th.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that good for the growth of the game in the States? I mean, I don't know,
Howard. Last time the Maple Leafs won in 67, it was over on May 2nd. So that's what's happened since the 6-team NHL to what we have now.
That's 2 full months, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just seems, we're old guys, so obviously we're used to, a spring finish or an early spring finish. But the fact that it's still going on and we're still talking about it is more as an aside than like I'm so into it. And one more sports story. The golf's U.S. Open, as it does, finished yesterday on Father's Day. Did you watch any of it?
A little bit, not a lot. Is it always this weekend?
Yes.
Do you see? What's the one that's usually around Labor Day? Isn't there one?
Well, it used to be. It used to be the PGA Championship was in August, but they moved it all around.
Oh, okay.
They've changed it so that the Masters in April, PGA in May, U.S. Open in June, and the British Open, or the Open Championship, is in July. And then that's the end of the majors. Mm-hmm. But it was very entertaining. It was one of the most entertaining last 9 holes of any major for a very long time, since Tiger. And why it was is because it came down to 2 players that were neck and neck with 5 or 6 holes to go. There was nobody else that could win it except these 2 guys. And it just goes to show you why golf is so hard, because one of the best players that's ever played the game missed a putt that you could make. The first putt he missed, he takes a 2-shot lead with 5 holes to go. There or thereabouts. Then he misses a 2.5-foot putt. I swear.
That was on the 16th, right?
I think it was on the 15th. 15th or 16th.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get this right, because he bogeys 3 of the last 5 holes. So he plays brilliantly to take a 2-shot lead. And there's also, Rory McIlroy hasn't won a major in 10 years. He's been one of the best players in the sport for about 15 or 16 years, but he won 4 majors in his first 4 or 5 years on tour, and then nothing. And so year after year after year, it gets more and more excruciating, and here he has a chance to win with 4 or 5 holes to go. So first he misses a putt you or I could make. And why I say that is, it wasn't downhill, it wasn't side hill, it was just a pretty standard putt that lipped out, and now he's 1 down. Then I think he parred the next hole. Maybe it was 16. Parred the next hole. Then he comes to 18, gets a bad break on his drive, and chips up to 3.5 feet, but it was above the hole. Now that putt, anyone could miss, but in that moment he needed to make it, because if he sinks it, he wins the U.S. Open, because the guy behind him would have, it's a very tough hole to birdie, but he misses it. And I got to tell you, it was like, it's just one of those things that you see in sport where you think, that's going to be, that one's going to sting a while. Now, taking nothing away from Bryson DeChambeau, who is also, one of the great players of his sport and an amazing golfer, and he hit an amazing shot on the last hole to actually win it. But if Rory McIlroy doesn't miss that last putt, it's a completely different story. And I really felt bad for the guy. I really he's one of my favorite players now, and I just felt bad for him.
Yeah, and he wore it on his sleeve, apparently. He left the facility without talking to the media or anything, and apparently got in his SUV, and some gravel flew up, and he sort of dashed out of there.
Well, he's been so good about talking to him. Like, this is the second year in a row he's finished second. His record in the majors the last 4 or 5 years is the best in the sport. He just hasn't won it. Mm-hmm. And you could just see in the scoring, he was waiting to see if this guy was going to tie him. Because from where this guy was on the last hole, there was a high probability that there would be a playoff. But this guy hit an amazing shot, and there was no playoff. So they showed a picture in the scoring area of Rory, and he had his hat kind of up, and he just had that look on his face. And forget that it's golf for a second. One of the great things about watching sport is, because that thing they used to say at the beginning of Wide World of Sports, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat.
Yeah. He was exasperated.
He was devastated. And our friend Dan, who doesn't really watch sports, it's what I always say, like, you're missing some human drama. You miss that, I think.
Howard, it's amazing how I stood on right out there yesterday telling Dan, not having some level of sports in his life, what he's missing. And then he was sort of mocking me. Oh, yes, I'm missing quite a lot. Yes, it's a big hole in my life. And I was saying, no, seriously. I said, because Dahl and I are listening to the Jays game at 7-6, bottom of the ninth, and it's like both of us are sort of on edge, and he comes over and asks, well, what's going on here? And then I had to explain to him. He said, a series in baseball. Like, do you win series? I said, yeah. And what do you get for that? I said, well, you don't get anything. If you win a series in baseball, it's just part of the season because teams play 3 or 4 games, and then you can win that series. Well, yes, but if you win an NHL series, you advance. Why not in a baseball series? And I said, well, they have that in baseball in the playoffs, but anyway, on and on. And I'm thinking, I'm explaining this to him? Like, that's fine. He's not into it, but he's that much not into it. And again, I said, boy, if you just had some mild interest from time to time, you could really enjoy this. And then he conveyed that he has no interest in pursuing sports as a passion.
Well, isn't, as often happens, you and I are on the same wavelength when it comes to things like this. Like getting into the Buffalo Bills the last couple of years, for me, it's kind of like Dahl's, kind of revived, or I want to say renewed interest in baseball. But you know what? I look forward to it because I know the personalities. I know what's at stake. And it's the human aspect of it. Like I watch golf for a variety of reasons. And most people would say, well, it's kind of boring. But I'll tell you, the 2.5 hours yesterday afternoon, I literally was on the edge of my seat. My brothers and I are all messaging back and forth. Some of my other golf buddies are like, this is amazing. And then talking about, my first thought was, and I said to my older brothers, I said, Rory may never win another major. Like, this is the kind of thing that it's not just going to sting. It's going to be devastating to him. He's 34 or 35 years old. It was one of his best chances in 10 years. And that's what sports gives you. It gives you a not just something to cheer for, wins and losses. It gives you a chance to relate to people as human beings when you see them under the most extreme pressure. How do they act? To me, that's the most fascinating thing about sports.
Yeah, of all my friends, I don't think I have another friend like Dan who's just totally disassociated from that world.
I do. I have 2 friends. Like I have Dan.
Yeah, I can't think of another one.
My buddy Dave.
Yeah.
My buddy Dave has no interest in this. Mm-hmm. You know what? And what I'm talking about is when the game's on the line and the field goal kicker has to come in at the end of the game. Like, I love watching him warm up. You see him going, they always cut to the sidelines and he's kicking it into that little weird net. And I think, this guy's about to go in. And when you're watching baseball and the game's on the line and they bring in the reliever and your team's winning and he's got to hold the other team, like, it's what Dan misses about sport. Dan thinks it's just about the wins and losses and the mechanics of the game, but it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I can't relate to that. And I would just say, I can't think of another friend of mine that in a conversation wouldn't be, hey, yeah, what about the Jays? They're sucking this year. Or what are the Leafs going to do with Marner? Probably to a person, I could have those conversations. But, one thing about Dan, the agony of defeat doesn't rip through him every spring when the Leafs are eliminated in the first round.
No, absolutely. He misses. He gets to avoid that for sure. And I'm not a big Jays fan, and I only care about the Leafs by association. And I don't follow basketball anymore. But if I'm flipping around randomly, even if it's some sport like curling, and somehow there's something of significance. I've said this to you on the show. When sport matters, when a game matters, I can watch anything.
Right. Well, look at it on this level. You mentioned my son, Danny. He works for MLSE. And the main part of his job is he works with TFC as their videographer and, documents their season for them. honestly, I've never been much of a soccer fan. You know that. MLS and the Toronto FC were just sort of over there. I never really paid much attention. But since he's become involved, now I'm sort of living and dying with the team.
Are you really?
Because I am. Because I want my son to be happy. And he's part of the team. He travels with them and everything. So when they win, they're happy.
Yeah, of course.
When you win 2 or 3 in a row, the atmosphere is good. When they don't, like last year was a horrible season, it's not the best environment to be part of.
Yeah, I guess.
So now, whenever they play, I've got it on and I'm watching, and I'm not even sure I'm watching the soccer. I'm watching this sort of exercise to see if my son's going to be part of a happy situation at the end of it or something. But more and more, because of that, and because of, Welcome to Wrexham and that other soccer show, I'm beginning to appreciate the nuances and the culture of that sport. And it's like, oh, see, there's what I was missing. I never looked at it from this perspective or that perspective. And it changes everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. Certainly when it comes to Wrexham, I haven't watched season 3. I'm just not really into series right now, but I am interested. I mean, and with Danny being part of that team, anything that can get you, again, you're making my point. Anything that invests you on a human level with sports is why we watch it.
Yep.
So there I was yesterday. And it's one of the biggest tournaments, one of the 4 biggest tournaments. So of course I want to see, how it turns out. And I'm a big fan of Rory McIlroy. I like the guy, and in the absence of Tiger, it's like he's kind of like my next favorite guy. And, I was living and dying with this guy's last couple of hours. And when he left the golf course yesterday, and, most people understood, it's very rare for him not to talk to the media after. But I think most people understood, okay, well, some guys online were like, well, you should have stuck around and, congratulated Bryson. Well, no, that's not how it works.
And who would understand that more than anyone is Bryson. Absolutely.
It would be different if they were in the same group. Of course he would congratulate him. But yeah, I felt really bad. And that's weird. That's what sports can do. I felt bad for that guy yesterday. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. But as a fan, when he missed that putt on 18, I was like, I couldn't believe it. And it was a tough putt, even though it was short. The little one he missed, the one I started with, that one was just nerves. It was just, you could see his whole demeanor change. Once he got the lead, he was a different guy the last hour of that. And it was, again, interesting to watch.
Now, you were pulling for him? You wanted him to win?
Yes, I did. I wanted him to get this 10 years without a major thing off his back. And again, he's got the best record in these 4 tournaments statistically over the last 4 or 5 years without a win.
When you live with that stuff, and again, in that sport, as we've said all along, it's just you. Your teammates can't pick you up, or other parts of the team can't fill the holes for you.
No, they can't.
It's just you.
Yeah. And Dan does have the benefit of not having, I didn't have a lot of anxiety last night, but it stayed with me a little bit. I was a little bit bummed for the guy. So, but that's what you sort. That's the deal you make. If you follow a team, whether it's the Leafs or whoever, that phrase, you live and die with their results. But it's because of the human nature of it.
It's like now it's like the Blue Jays are having this problem this year. They can't, offense. They did all right yesterday, but generally, a lot of games, 3 and 4 hits, and they just can't generate offense. And I thought about that the other night when I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, the stadium's full and people buying $13 hot dogs and $200 sweaters. Dahl and I were down there last week, and these new Toronto City sweaters are $200 each, and on and on and on. And yet they can't get more than 3 or 4 hits. I actually get in bed a bit anxious. You know, a bit of anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pissed off right now. It's no way to go to bed, and it's a sports team that is causing this. And believe me, it's not severe or anything. I forget about it in moments. Honestly, I do. But it's just, you go to bed like, oh, fuck, I'm pissed off at them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Dan never has to go.
Dan has equanimity that we can't relate to in so many different ways. We were just talking about your lack of interest in sports, and I think not that I don't know this for sure, but I think what you miss in the fact that he and I are into a couple of sports is what you miss is the human aspect of it. I really felt bad for this guy that I cheer for yesterday, who, you know, kind of blew a chance to win one of the biggest tournaments in the sport, and it stayed with me. You know, through the night, different people were texting me, and I have, I'm like you, Fred. I immediately have theories, and I'm, fucking, saying all kinds of nonsense to people. But I thought about it right up until and including when I was going to sleep, and I thought, oh, poor little Rory McIlroy.
Wow. Yeah, no, I don't have the. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm not. I mean, I don't have these.
So when you're going to sleep, what are you thinking about?
You guys
when you're going to sleep, are you thinking about like, oh, I really should have stained that deck better? I'll get after it tomorrow.
No. Actually, I go through the steps of whatever project I'm working on. I go through the steps of what I'm going to do next, and just puzzle it out in my brain. That puts me to like calmly puts me to sleep.
I know. Whenever you tell me, it puts me to sleep.
Well,
yeah.
I would look at it this way. Again, this is my perspective, and Howard, you can relate to this. When I look back over my life, being into sports and following like football, baseball, hockey in particular, it's been great. All the events I've gone to, the moments I've shared with friends at events or in front of a television with a group of people, and reading stats, reading stories, it's added a lot to my life.
Well,
but again, if I didn't, and if I didn't have that, I'd be like Dan, something else, I guess. But
yeah,
well, it's not
I
just
take an interest here and there. I mean, like I was over asking questions about whatever
I heard
Oilers were doing.
Yeah, I heard.
Oh, you did? Okay.
No, I heard. No, I get it.
About the concept of the series in baseball.
Yeah, you told me.
Oh, that part. Yeah, but I was wondering about the how the heck you can been eight goals in a Stanley Cup hockey game seemed a little bit much.
It was a lot. What I said to Fred though is the opening to ABC's Wide World of Sports. My entire childhood, I remember that when the music would come on, and it would be like the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat is what's interesting about it isn't just the wins and losses and the spectacle of it. Although that does add to it for sure, but it's inside of the wins and losses and how players react and how human beings, when you got a free throw in basketball to possibly win the game or send it into overtime, or a field goal kick to win the game, or in Rory McIlroy's case, he had a 3.5-foot putt that would have basically either guaranteed him a playoff or won his tournament, and he missed it. Believe me, I was like, you gotta. I felt it. Mm-hmm. For sure, I did.
Like that? Have you missed a silver?
Absolutely,
putt?
I have.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, I have.
Or Howard, conversely, the acceleration of Nick Taylor last year and that long putt at the Canadian Open.
Crazy.
The position that puts you at, like on the other side.
Oh yeah.
Like that joyous feeling when it goes in.
I jumped up. That's a great example. The guy wins the Canadian Open. First Canadian to do it in like 60 years. Believe me, I jumped up as though I did it. And that's what sports gives you.
Yes.
When the Blue Jays won, was the second World Series was when Joe Carter hit that home run. Is that the second one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We all stood up. And that's what sports can do for you.
That's a quirky little thing. Both Blue Jay World Series, Joe Carter was the last guy to touch the ball, because in the first World Series, he was at first base and caught the ball for the final out. And then second one, he hit the ball out for the final play.
That is interesting.
Isn't it? That's some fodder for you.
Hey, I was going to say, speaking of teams, we should talk about the team that the Retirement Sherpa has put together, because I met a lot of them there on Friday, and it is quite a lineup, and one that's easy to cheer for.
Yes, thank you to Howard and Sherpa J for the golf clinic on Friday. Again, a lot of people came out, a lot of people that are part of the Sherpa stable. And I imagine some of them had portfolios and thought, is this performing to the level in which I think it should? And they got the Sherpa to have a look, either Sherpa Tim or Sherpa J, and they gave them the straight goods, and they became clients of the Retirement Sherpa. It's if you're in that situation, again, standing offer, they'll have a look, they'll give you the straight goods, tell you exactly where you are with it, and whether you should make some changes. He's the Retirement Sherpa. Tim Nibble, a portfolio manager. Raymond James, a member of the Canadian Investors Protection Fund.
And I just saw a note that I got the other day that the Sherpa just celebrated 33 years of being in this business, this industry, and he sent a note to all his clients and friends, and yeah, man, it's quite something. He talks about the people on his team, and he finishes up by he thanks everybody because that's his style, and then he finishes it up by saying a quote from a famous motivational speaker, a guy named Zig Ziglar. You ever heard of him?
Zig Ziglar?
Yeah. No. Pretty famous in that motivational world. He says, Ziglar. He says, he said a quote from Zig Ziglar has stuck with me from decades ago, and it's on the Sherpa website. It says, "You can get anything you want out of life, helping others get what they want." And that's the Sherpa motto, my friend. Add that to your Sherpa stuff. Bum, 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 bum. Okay. Well, I know we got a couple more minutes to go. And we have some more stuff to get to. Dan, we have to do your news.
Yep, we do that.
But you guys have expressed some interest in how things are going with my new friend.
Oh, yes.
You've had 2 dates so far, right? Or did you have?
You had another date on the weekend.
Oh,
yeah,
third.
Date number 3.
Oh,
and
okay.
where was this?
Well, this is the thing.
Bike riding?
What's that?
Bike riding?
Cemetery tours?
No, actually. What I'm about to tell you will be a shock to you two who know me very well, and to others that know me slightly. So,
third date, though. Third date. That's an important.
It was a very nice time. But here's the thing that will surprise you. Maybe not shock is a bit much. This will surprise you. A couple things all happened. I said to her at the beginning of the week, I'm not available. I got a lot of stuff going on. I said, I might be able to get together Friday. And she said, well, I'm not available Friday. I said, okay, well, no worries. I said, unfortunately, Saturday, I've got to go to, I was invited and accepted the invitation to my buddy's 50th birthday party. He's a great guy. Angelo's his name. He's fans of our show. And all my golf buddies were there, along with like a couple hundred people. In the backyard of this beautiful home. They had like catering and it's amazing, and a live band, Dan. It was all sorts of, it was big.
Wow. Sounds like a party. Wow.
It was a party, which I'm not known for. I'm a big party goer.
I know, yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, when's the last time you went to somebody's house for a party? Even though this was like, it was like a house party, but an outdoor festival, really. I don't know when the last time you guys went to a party, but it's been a long time for me.
I was with you at Bob McCowan's 60th birthday.
That's the last time?
That would be the last time that I went to, yeah.
Yeah, maybe me too. It's a long time.
Yeah.
So I said to her, well, unfortunately, I'm going to this thing Saturday night, thinking like, she's not going to want to come with me. She goes, oh, I'll go with you. I'm like, really? All right.
So she did go.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, I will tell you, it was great. She was very engaging with people, and she's very at ease with other people, unlike me. And I it's been so long since I've had to interact with, like, I see these guys that I golf with every weekend, almost every weekend, and certainly the odd Wednesday.
Sure.
Like, I'll give you an example. I got a little flustered. Like, I'm trying to introduce her to people.
Right.
And there's these brothers that I play with. One is named Trevor and one is named Kevin. And I know the difference. I've known these guys for 10 or 12 years. But when I'm introducing her to Kevin, I kept calling him Trevor. Like that kind of thing. It was just...
Oh, I bet they love that.
It was so awkward.
Nervous.
I was nervous. I was nervous for a variety of reasons. I'm nervous because I'm like, I don't know what. I've only met this woman 3 times, and here I am, like walking into this party with her, and then all my golf buddies, who I really have never been to a golf buddy party of this size.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, it turned out great. We had a great time.
Really?
Yeah. They had a What? Why are you surprised?
Well, because for a third date, that's a
was
sort
a
of
big
a
one,
challenging
yeah.
environment.
It was
because
challenging.
You're trying to balance, because you want to talk to your buddies and guffaw and horse around, and you got to worry about her. And I get it.
I didn't.
Thinks of you
and what she thinks of me.
Yeah.
What these guys
They don't know her. You hardly know her.
Exactly.
And yet that whole balancing. I no wonder you were nervous and befuddled.
And and what are these guys going to say to her that might be, Howard throws a lot of clubs and blah, 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 that kind of thing. But
Howard throws a lot of clubs.
Old Howard, not new Howard, but there was a time old Howard got angry. So, and they were great. The guys were just great with her. And what I'm about to tell you is, well, first of all, before I tell you that, the last weird part, check this out. This is how big this party was. He had a guy from Rodney's Oyster Bar shucking oysters.
No, really?
Yes,
wow.
dudes. And, and she said, I love oysters. I'm like, I love oysters. So we go over and we just like eat oysters for about 10 minutes. She
loves oysters?
Loves oysters. And then there was like people walking around with like these little sliders. It was that kind of place. But fun.
Did you hold yourself back? Because when you get to some situation where food is like coming at you.
Oh, yeah.
You just want to...
I kept saying to her, I probably should stop eating oysters. She's like, no, keep going. I'm like, so...
Aphrodisiac.
All right.
Well, I'm telling you. Sliders are a neat thing, too.
Yeah, little mini burgers.
I like the slider.
I do
like
too.
them.
They had so much good food.
You don't really feel like you've had a burger. You just,
So she had a couple glasses of wine. I had some fake beer. And like I said, there was a band playing. And then, there's big fire. And there's, I would say maybe 150 people. 30 or 40.
Did you dance?
Wait. 30 or 40 people that I knew very well.
Right.
And so it got dark, and now she's like, everyone was dancing. She's like, do you want to dance? I'm like,
oh, jeez.
I'm trying to, I get all like this face. I'm like, I try to make it. I said, I don't know. I haven't really danced a lot since I stopped drinking. And she sort of looked at me, well, why not? I'm like, I don't know. I said, well, I don't know if I want to just get up there and start dancing. She goes, well, why not? I couldn't come up with anything other than I'm an awkward human being. So, go ahead.
You said, I don't know if I want to just get up there and start dancing. Well, what's the alternative? You either do it or you don't.
I know.
You want to ramp up? Would you want to?
Yeah, I don't know. I said to her, first of all, yes, I wanted to ramp up. First, I said to her, maybe we could do a slow dance. Like, let's go do a slow dance. Ramp up to the I didn't want to just walk up on the dance floor. Like they brought in like a parquet flooring thing. Like it wasn't like we were dancing on the grass.
Wow.
So at first I said, well, we could do a slow dance. And she kind of looked at me like it just didn't compute in her brain that a man wouldn't just want to start dancing. So here's the move I made that she fucking loved. So the song ends, everyone leaves the dance floor, and then another song started right away. The guys were a pretty decent band. And I sort of looked at her, and now it's dark, and I looked around for a second to see if any of my friends were paying attention. I said, "You want to see me dance?" She goes, "Yeah, I do." Like it's almost like a dare. I went, "Okay," and I went up by myself.
Put on a show
just for her. I went up and started dancing, and she fucking loved it. I was like, dude, I'm on, not on my, did I not want to dance? Now I'm dancing by myself. And then she came up, and then we started dancing together. And, I had a pretty good time. I probably danced, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. It's so weird dancing when you're not drunk. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah,
but I did
with your hands in the air and stuff.
I don't dance. I don't. My hands never. My hands never go above my shoulders. But I know how to dance. I could put on a show. She thought I was a good dancer. Then we got to dance slow because I paid my dues. What's that?
That's generous.
What?
She thought you were a good dancer.
She did, dude. If you
dance like me,
I don't dance like you. I don't do. I dance. I wanted her to know that I know how to move my lower body. That was the message.
Okay, Elvis.
I was trying to send a message that I know how that equipment works. Anyway, then we had
some spins.
I did spins with her. And then a bunch of my golf buddies came up. Now, of course, they have the luxury of being semi-cut, so they're all dancing, and I'm dancing around. It's weird dancing with people you know. Because, I don't know, am I supposed to look at you? And what are you supposed to make? It's all weird. And then we got to slow dance, which was great. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it turned out, but I just thought you guys would find that amusing that I was up there fucking dancing.
Well, that sounds like a great evening. Plus, it left a good impression in her mind. Would you want to go to a party with me? It could have been a bungalow in Scarborough, right?
Oh, no, it was definitely
And then you walk into this place where it actually looks like a scene from some movie, probably.
I was telling Charlie, she got home last night and spent a little time with me for Father's Day. I was watching her dog this week, and I was telling her the story here in the office last night. And then I told her all this, and she's laughing along. And then I said, and then I took her home. It was about 11:30 or 11:45. She goes, "What? Who are you?" I go, I don't know. Because usually
was that early.
Pardon me.
It was that early.
You think that's early? 11:30.
11:45, yeah.
Dude, that's party? No. The party was still going on. But I said to her about 11:15. I said, because we'd been there since 8. It's a long time at a party for me. Mm-hmm. And I just said to her, "You let me know the second you're ready to leave." She goes, "I'm ready to go now." I'm like, "Okay, let's do it."
All right.
Anyway, it's very fun.
If she asks you to go to a party with her people, are you going to go?
Of course I would. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. I don't think she's asking me to go anywhere soon. One other thing, I don't know.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe do I seem like, hey, I should introduce you to my friends? I don't know that it was that. It was more like we didn't have anything else as no other options. She wanted to come to a party with me.
And I'm going to say this. That was a pretty bold move on her part too.
Absolutely.
Definitely, you know what I mean? That going out for dinner, going to a movie, just one-on-one, that type of thing. But to put herself in that position was a big decision. So good on her.
Yeah, and she handled herself great. I could just see she's very at ease with people. Again, more at ease than me. And there was a couple of my buddies that came up, and one of my buddies who's kind of a character. He kept saying to her. It's funny. I said to my other friends, I forgot to warn her about this. You've met this guy, Mike Bondi. He's a great guy, but he's very big, big personality. First thing he says to her is, "Oh, so you're Howard's friend. Let me tell you something about Howard. He's a great kisser." I'm like, he's that guy. He's that guy. Oh, yeah, believe me. At first, I didn't like it, but he's a very good guy. And she's like, and he kept coming up to us over and over again. Another friend of mine, one of the guys there I'm actually good friends with. I go to his house. He's the guy that made our Humble and Fred charcuterie boards, Tom. And so she has no idea. She knew I did a podcast, and she has no idea who Humble and Fred were. I never told her it was a Humble and Fred show. I just said, this is what I do, and never really talked about us. Well, he comes over, and now it's a few hours into the party, and he was telling her what a huge fan he was of us. Mm-hmm. How when he first met me, he remembered me he loved our show, and he saw us on billboards and on TV and blah, blah, blah. And then later she says, "Should I know you?" No, there's no reason you would. Because she's lived in this city for a long time. And she said, "Are you famous?" I said, "No." Believe me. I said to about 20 people who know me, maybe, but I said no. Because she said that man went on, because he did. He went on and on about how great our show was, how we were these iconic guys in the 90s and blah, blah, blah. And oh, yeah.
Sooner or later, she's going to tune in.
No,
sooner or later.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, are you kidding? Honestly, at some point, if this continues, she's gonna. How could she not?
I don't know.
She's even going to be talking to one of her kids or somebody, and I know that guy. Yeah, I remember him. Oh, look. Yeah.
Well,
so prepare for that.
Well, that day we're gonna have to clean this fucking act up. We're gonna because.
But even that can be so awkward when somebody really is, promoting you, building you up, or whatever. And we know the way the industry works. If if 5% of the listening audience listen to you, that was a good audience. When 95% of the people really have never even heard of you or listened to you. And it's like, so often when people are doing that, it's like it's not landing very well because the chances are overwhelming. No, they've never heard you.
Well, she didn't know my last name until Saturday. Like, there was no opportunity to look me up.
How did that go over?
What, because of the UJ thing? Yeah. It didn't seem to faze her. All right, boys, we got Dan Duran's news. We got to talk about the chamber plan, but first, let's get to this.
Now, here's to a fella named Dan Duran, a hell of a guy with a hella big wang, the quintessential anchor man. His voice is nice and low. Ho! Dan Duran, the anchorman comes. As for credentials, he has none. Can't tell a headline from his bum, but his voice is nice and low. Dan Duran, the anchorman's here. He's prone to falling off his chair, but he's got a big wang, so he don't care, and his voice is nice and low.
My voice is nice and low.
And now, live from the luxury trailer, right next to Fred's estate, here he is, movie anchorman, and great dad, great all-around guy, even though he doesn't know a foul ball from his foul balls. Thank you very much. Here's, I don't want her to listen to this. Here's Dan Duran.
Inside Out 2 and House of Dragon hit screens. The Heat Dome has arrived, and the Tonys were handed out with Stereophonic taking the most awards. But let's talk about car thieving. Across the country, more than 70,000 cars were stolen just last year. A few weeks ago, Peel Police, they recovered 369 vehicles in some sort of sting. And now to help out, this is launched yesterday on Sunday, the Canadian Border Service Agency has deployed a new mobile X-ray scanning machine to the Greater Toronto area. They spent $3.5 million on this unit. And authorities say in a statement that the mobile X-ray unit was brought in as part of a national plan to combat auto theft, which partially relies on non-intrusive inspection technology. Now, the statement doesn't say how exactly they're going to be using the unit in the GTA and where specifically it would be deployed or how often it would be used. But I guess you could imagine it's probably, if they're scanning for cars, it's got to be a big thing. And containers, maybe, or I don't know if they pull up on the side of buildings and scan warehouses, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think? There's a danger of being scanned?
No, I that wouldn't bother me. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
it wouldn't bother me. These Apple AirTags, you guys know what those are. They're very cheap, and I don't know why anybody with an expensive car just wouldn't hide one of those in their car. Now, I guess the thieves have the technology to detect those things, maybe. But if you put a little Apple AirTag, hit it up under your dashboard or something, when maybe in the first little while that your car is missing, those things are amazing.
Well, there must be some reason.
That's simple.
I mean, a lot of cars have tracer technology. Mm-hmm. Well, didn't one of you guys have a story about somebody who could see that their car was being loaded onto a shipping crate of some kind?
Yeah.
So having an Apple AirTag, so you can see that your car is about to be loaded somewhere, and
but you know exactly where it is, and you get the police to go there.
Yeah, but I think whoever had that story, I know, but I think whatever one of you brought up that story, the police. So how you get a cop to drive down to Cherry Beach or something? I don't know.
Well, with 70,000 cars being stolen, it's not the highest priority of theirs because they've got a lot of other things on their plate. So if somebody's life is not being threatened, it may not be the number one thing to go try and stop the car thieving. But whatever's going on, I mean, Canada has this reputation now of, this is a good spot to thieve. If you're going to do some thieving, apparently you can get away with it because a lot of our cars end up other parts of the world. Do you have one of those AirTags in your car?
No, nobody's going to steal my car,
And my car's, I don't know if it's, we've talked about this. I don't know. It's pretty tough to steal my car. Because you can't, although there must be a way to do it with electric cars, I'm sure, but I think it's tougher.
Fred Ball just checked in. He said Ivor Hamilton had the AirTags, and that's how he got his car back. I wasn't aware that Ivor's car was stolen, but an example of how it can work for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ballsy.
I haven't heard from Fred in a long time.
Yeah, I hope Fred and Nancy and the kids are doing well. Happy post-Father's Day, Freddie. You're a good boy. Yeah, I don't know how they steal electric cars because, if I can't get into my own car unless I've got my phone with me or I have a key card. It's like a credit card that you need to tap. Because other than that I can't get into it.
Well, what if it was stolen? Is there any procedures that you're supposed to follow? Or
I don't like. I have no answer to that. I don't know how you steal that car. I'm sure there's a way. I'm sure that thieves who enjoy car thieving, as you said, but you know what, Dan? Maybe that's a thing for tomorrow's broadcast. Let's look up how you steal an electric car,
and if you can blow it up or not if they steal it.
And by the way, maybe tomorrow, because we got to go, we should save that story. Speaking of electric's battery, the electric battery shark story coming out of Dipshit's face this weekend. It's another great example of how fucking dumb those people are.
I'd be, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because I hate his guts, I'd be more afraid of him than Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Would, for those reasons. Did you see the other thing? He gets up, I forget where it was, in Detroit or something. He starts ragging out Biden. He said, we should have a cognitive test. I'll challenge him to a cognitive test because my doctor, Ronnie Johnson, got the doctor's name wrong.
Yeah.
Got his doctor's audience.
So he's talking about cognitive. And again, not a huge thing, but at that moment, he doesn't even know the name of his doctor. And nobody calls him on that stuff. It's bizarre.
No, I know. And then I guess Biden was at a conference. I know. We always say at the end of the show, we're going to wrap up, but first we're going to rant about Trump for 18 minutes. But Biden was at a conference, and at some point with Obama, and Obama just kind of like gently takes his arm and guides him off stage. And the right wing went mental about this. Meanwhile, there's a picture of Trump walking down a corridor to get to a stage, and he's holding the hand of one of his bodyguards. Now, probably for legitimate reasons, it's dark and it's a bit precarious. But it's the same reason that Obama took Biden's hand. He's an 80-year-old man.
Yeah, and and the thing is, if you're concerned about cognitive, well, you should be concerned on both sides, not just on one side. If that's an issue to you, that's the bizarre stuff about it.
But there's cognitive, which you would expect an 80-year-old man or woman, because they could be things too. You would expect that there would be some mental decline in their acuity. But what Trump's experiencing is just bananas compared to Joe. Joe Biden isn't going off talking about what would happen if he was on an electric boat and sharks were nearby. We'll get to that tomorrow. In the meantime, let's get to Chamber Plan. Fred, man.
Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, Canada's #1 group benefits plan for small business. They have the Teladoc system. It's really remarkable. So if you have a specific problem beyond what your GP can help you with, they'll hook you up with the doctor that can address this problem. Oh yeah, it's like an insider's club. I've used it, works well, just part of the Chambers plan, what they offer for small business. Go to chamberplan.ca today, get a free quote. Dental, prescriptions, as I said, the Teladoc system, travel insurance, therapies, a HR component to it. It really is a great thing for small business. Do a fantastic job. It's a non-profit, so do a great job of holding the line on premiums from year to year. Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, Canada's #1 group benefits plan for small business. It's grand.
All right, there you go. I said we're going to be on early, Dan, tomorrow, so around 7:05 Eastern Time. If you're a Facebook follower that likes to get the program as a live broadcast, that's tomorrow.
That's our content creation time.
That's right. And because I got to get out of here. I got a lot of, I call this the season of balance, but this next 7 or 8 days is the busiest my golf schedule will be all year. So
in the punishing heat too.
Yeah,
so
man.
You got to stay hydrated, and you got to get one of those fans that Fred was talking about.
Absolutely. I might. You know what I'll do, Dan? I'll just get Here's what I'll do. I'll just get a long extension cord. Carry this thing around with me. Don't step on my fan.
You need a caddy with a fan.
I need a fan caddy. I like it. And tomorrow on our program, I believe Jeff Lumby is going to be here, but if he's not, we'll reschedule him. And tomorrow we will do some emails. Lots of feedback on the shower incident. In the meantime, here's Dan Duran again.
This episode of Humble and Fred was brought to you by The Retirement Sherpa, The Chambers Plan, Boron One, Bodog, and Lender's Choice Mortgages. For contents and comments, we read all of our emails, Humble and Fred at humbleandfredradio.com. So tell us what you think, and something you can do to help us out is tell your friends, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, share an episode, rate the podcast. We would appreciate that. For Humble and Fred, from the Jeff Lewis Zoom Theater, I'm Dan Duran. And remember, stay cool, and even if you are challenged by a lack of interest in spectator sports, you can enjoy every goddamn day.
Turntables and a microphone, bottles and cans, and just clap your hands, or just clap your hands.